What's up, humans? It's Steven, and this is my review for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the comic book comparisons, and my thoughts on the MCU Phase 4 and the MCU as a whole going forward. If you enjoyed this video and you're into comics, gaming, nerd culture, or even reaction videos, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Alright, let's get it. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the long-awaited sequel to 2018's Black Panther by visionary Ryan Coogler. I've seen this movie twice now, and I feel like the film did exactly what it set out to do, which was be not only a goodbye to Chadwick and the character of Black Panther, but also provide closure to fans of the character and the series, especially those fans who came on board in 2018 and don't have any interest in sticking around in the MCU outside of the Black Panther franchise. The film, of course, had an uphill battle as the script was already finished before the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman. So with rewrites having to be both respectful and still contribute to the MCU's bigger picture as a whole, it's safe to say that this movie was doomed to fail from the start. And the fact that the cast and crew were able to salvage what they could and still make this film an enjoyable experience is an element that will probably go underrated for years. So, starting with the negatives. As I said, the script was complete before the movie lost its lead actor, and the finished product very much feels like a film that wanted to go in a certain direction but ultimately had to alter course. There are quite a few scenes, specifically with Everett Ross and Riri Williams, that feel like they had more story to them, but ultimately a lot of scenes were left on the cutting room floor. Speaking of Riri, she kind of didn't really need to be in this film at all, but on that same note, I am very glad that she was in the film. Riri is one of my favorite characters in the comics, and I feel like Dominique Thorne did a great job at bringing her essence to the screen, and she provided the subtle comedy that the MCU was known for prior to the current phase. I really can't wait to see her explore the character more in the show Ironheart, and I actually feel like that series is going to exceed a lot of people's expectations, so be on the lookout for that one. As far as Ross goes, it's understandable that he was in the film considering he had such a major role in the last one and he provides that connective tissue, but ultimately I felt like pairing him with Allegra de Fontaine made it feel more like a setup for the Thunderbolts movie rather than him actually contributing to much to the story. Now that may be due to scenes being cut, but I guess we'll never know now unless they release like the Coogler cut or something. That's about it for the negatives. I try to stay away from saying what people should and shouldn't do in art, because in art and film it is all subjective at the end of the day, and so what may not work for me, there are plenty of people out there who that was probably their favorite part of the movie. As far as positives go, the acting was really strong. I feel like if this weren't a Marvel movie and had a little bit less CGI, most of the performances could be competing for awards. Angela Bassett really left her mark and a lasting impression on the MCU, and I kinda high-key wish and hope going forward that a lot of characters will reference some of her quotes or find her to be an endearing character within the lore of the MCU. Letitia Wright definitely brought a performance that I wasn't expecting and honestly didn't think was possible for the character, given the lighthearted nature of Shuri in previous installments. So hats off to her, because she really did an amazing job. She brought emotion and depth to the character that was otherwise not all that seen in the first Black Panther. Tenoch Huerta kicked ass as Namor. Honestly, I prefer his version of Namor to the comic book character. He delivered a performance that was teetering on hospitable and terrifying at the same time. I thought that was amazing, and I loved how they painted him as a man backed into a corner, wanting to defend his people, who at any time could really do some damage. And I think he's going to be a wild card going forward in the MCU, and I am so happy with how the whole character came out and how he played him. The score is another positive for this film, as it was in the first movie, but in this one particularly, I love how at the beginning it sort of felt like an eerie spy thriller kind of tone mixed with those Wakandan vibes, but underneath the whole way you could feel sort of the upcoming war throughout the music, and the use of switching from diegetic to non-diegetic just slapped so hard. There were many times in the film where it's just like you're hearing the music in the score and then it fades into something that a character is listening to in the background, or it's the people singing, and it's just like, ooh, that was very nice. I love that transition. So that was really cool. And then the last thing I have for the positives, one of the things that I really liked was this underlying theme that was in the film that we see a lot in real life, but as a community we don't necessarily pay that much attention to, and that is just the dichotomy between Latin Americans and African Americans, or in this film, the people of Talocan and the Wakandans. In the film, the people of Talocan are very much like the Wakandans. They come from similar backgrounds. They're almost adjacent to each other geographically. However, they almost see themselves as different people, even though they are very much the same. And you see that in real life in America with the Black community and the Hispanic community. Like, even where I live, my complex is about 49% African American, 49% Hispanic, and then like 2% other. However, sometimes we often allow the language barrier to keep us from intermingling as much as we could, and it's such a shame because our cultures are so similar as far as our past, our histories, and our struggles, and it would just be amazing to see what kind of beauty our cultures could make if we were to blend more. And so I thought that was a beautiful thing to touch on within this movie, and I do hope that eventually just as a whole, people in general start to merge the cultures a little more, see what they can learn from each other, because we all, at the end of the day, all of the minorities are very similar to each other, and people in general, we're all very similar to each other and can learn a lot from each other. So now we move on to the comic book comparisons. So if you don't know, every MCU movie is pretty much based on one comic book arc, more or less, and then they take events from other comic book arcs that happen at different periods of time and merge them in order to alter the story. So Wakanda Forever is mostly based on the Black Panther arc of 2009 to 2010, I want to say, which was the prelude to Doom War. So Doom War is an arc about how Dr. Doom has seized control of all of Wakanda's vibranium. The prelude to Doom War is pretty much where this movie finds its stride. So what happens in prelude to Doom War? T'Challa is sidelined because there was an assassination attempt on his life. So without him being able to perform the duties of the Black Panther, many people in Wakanda feel like Wakanda is weak and that there needs to be a change in power. Shuri at the time has taken up the mantle of the Black Panther and is the protector. Because she's so different than her brother, she begins to lose the respect of the council, and a lot of nefarious things start going on within the government of Wakanda. Shuri eventually battles Namor the Submariner because she believes that he is the one who attempted to assassinate her brother. The part in the movie where Shuri and Riri came up with the idea to dry Namor out, that is actually in the comics. It's not Riri who helps out Shuri, but Shuri does come up with some technology to dehydrate Namor, as it were, and it allows her to fight him more readily, because in all honesty, Namor is much more powerful than Shuri is, even with the Black Panther mantle. And so she's able to weaken him a bit, and they go to blows on an island, very much like what you see in the movie. Now, the flooding of Wakanda, that actually does not happen in the prelude to Doom War comics, but that actually happens in a comic book arc called Avengers vs. X-Men, where certain mutants are bestowed the power of the Phoenix Force, Namor being one of them. He goes to Wakanda and actually floods Wakanda, and that leads to a huge conflict between him and T'Challa. For years after that, T'Challa and Namor are bitter enemies, and it even comes to a point where T'Challa ends up killing Namor by dropping a planet on him, essentially. But that is the flooding of Wakanda is one of the most iconic events that happened in recent Marvel Comics history. So it was pretty cool to see that play out in the movies here. As far as Riri Williams go, pretty much not much was taken from the comics, mainly because we had very few scenes with her. But if you are interested in finding more out about Riri and her backstory, I would suggest you check out this Iron Man comic right here, which provides her origin story and shows you how she enters into the comic book landscape. So now we get to my final thoughts on MCU Phase 4 and the MCU going forward in general. Phase 4 was a mixed bag. I know a lot of people have really disliked this phase. I have been of the mind where it's kind of been hit or miss for me. One thing that I will congratulate Marvel on, and hopefully they do more of going forward, in Phase 4 was a lot of experimentation and a lot of taking chances. And what I mean by that is the types of directors that they got, the stylization that they went for, with a lot of different things. A lot of them were misses. They were swinging for the hills and they were missing for sure. But I gotta give them credit for being willing to step out. And I feel like that this experimental period can pay off dividends if they take the lessons learned into Phase 5 and 6 going forward. But at the MCU as a whole, I'm not gonna lie, just to be completely honest, I feel like the superhero genre in the MCU has kind of overstayed its welcome on the big screen, as it were. And that is coming from an A1 Day 1 MCU fan. I mean, I remember way back when Iron Man first came out, I started telling everybody, I was like, oh, watch, they're gonna build up to the Avengers, and eventually they're gonna build up to Civil War, and yada yada yada. I was so geeked about the MCU, and I loved it every step of the way, and I still do love the MCU. But at the end of the day, everything must come to an end, and I kind of feel like Endgame was a very good way to ride off into the sunset for the MCU. But that's not gonna happen because everybody loves money. And I'm not mad. I love having superhero content around. But as far as the big screen, I feel like it has overstayed its welcome, mainly because the MCU has become so big and so vast with so many different characters. It is going to get a little bit hard to constantly pop out great, amazing stories time after time at this current format. Now, what I feel like personally would be great for the MCU, which probably won't happen, is I would love for them to take more advantage of the Disney Plus platform and doing the shows. Because here's the thing about comics. Comics are vast. Comics are huge. And the way a lot of people actually read comics is you have like your 0 issue or your issue number 1, which gives out, basically either the origin story of the hero, or it gives out it sets up the world, this new universe that this hero is going to embark on. If it's a new arc, they set up everything like that. And then you have your tie-in issues, you have your issues that go along with the entire arc. And some people may or may not read those. You're not missing too much if you don't read them. But if you do read them, you are getting a wealth of knowledge and you're getting immersed into the story. And then people usually, wait for the big crossover events and they read those. And so what I feel like would be great for the MCU to do would be to kind of reverse what they're doing now. Like with Phase 4, we had a lot of characters receive their origin story in the Disney Plus TV shows, and they're limited to 6 and 8 episodes, and we're supposed to get everything about this character and care about them, and then they're gonna get catapulted into a movie. And that didn't really hit very well for a lot of people, and understandably so. These characters do have a lot of depth to them as far as how they are in the comics, and for you to get a fully realized character, back in the day in the MCU, most characters didn't even become fully realized until about their 3rd movie. You had Iron Man had 3 movies, Captain America had 3 movies, Thor 3 movies. The characters really begin to hit their stride after the 3rd movie. So I feel like going forward, if we're going to introduce a new character, it would be cool to have their origin story be a movie. Like, go out, take a chance. You have money. Have the origin story be that 0 issue or that issue number 1. That's the movie. That's the origin story of the character, and then each character gets a TV series, and that you can explore them in longer form. I don't mean like 6-8 episodes. I mean at least 10 to 12 episodes, and possibly 2 seasons with 10 to 12 episodes in them. And that just allows us to spend time with the characters and get to know them, and we can pick and choose which shows we want to watch, which ones we want to get invested in, and then we meet up in the crossover movies. And I feel like that would be a little bit more lucrative for Marvel and Disney as a whole, as well as it would help people from getting burnt out, because I kind of feel like a lot of people are burnt out on the MCU, and that also has led to the dislike for Phase 4 as a whole. But either way, I'm always going to be a comic book fan, and so I'm typically always going to check out the movies, and I'm going to be here on this channel talking about it. And if you enjoy that, please definitely subscribe, because I want to be able to talk about them with you guys for sure. But that's going to wrap it up for my review of Black Panther. Let me know down in the comments how you felt about it. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you love it? And what do you think about the MCU going forward? Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you all in the next one.